Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. We know a lot about Ratan Tata, the industrialist, but what was he like as a person? What sort of childhood did he have? Were there women he loved but did not marry? And what were the things that mattered in his private life? Those are the secrets contained in this book published days after his death. It's called Ratan Tata, A Life. And today its author, Thomas Mathew, is my guest. Thomas Mathew, let's start with the young Ratan Tata. His parents divorced when he was just 12, and thereafter he lived with and was largely brought up by his grandmother, Lady Tata. He was devoted to her. Tell me about that relationship.
Karan, first let me start by saying I'm grateful to you for having me on your channel. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and be with you. Now, let me start with your first question. Mr. Tata had a very special relationship with his grandmother, whom he called My G. Now, I asked him, what does My G mean? He could not give me an explanation. Finally, he said it could be my grandmother. And what he said was, it showed how possessive he was about her. And she was his guiding light. He learned all his values from her, imbibed all the traditions, and the rights and wrongs of life were absorbed from her moral values. So she is the pillar of his initial years. She supported him in every possible way and took him under her wings, especially after his parents separated in 1944 when Ratan was only about 7 years old.
Now, Lady Tata lived in grand style. She had a huge mansion, dozens of liveried servants, as well as, I believe, a Rolls Royce. Was he spoilt or pampered?
Now, Karan, let's get the record straight. They lived in a place called Tata House, which was also called the Tata Palace because of the opulence that it signified. Okay, his grandmother did not have 2 dozen servants or helps. She had 40 servants slash helps slash assistants looking after the house. Okay, she didn't have a Rolls Royce. She had a Rolls Royce, she had a Delage, and she had a Cadillac, a 12-cylinder Cadillac, if you please. And the Rolls Royce she had between the 30s and 1940s, it had the base of what you call the sunshine vehicle of the American president. And it could take the base of the American president's car, could take a superstructure which would take about 8 to 10 people. So that's how big those cars were. So was he spoiled or pampered? He was not spoiled because he was pampered, nor was he pampered so much that he was spoiled. Neither. He had the capacity not to absorb the opulence, but understand it. At the same time, try to escape whenever he could. For instance, although it's not contained in the book because the book was getting very voluminous, what he did was when his mother sent this huge Delage or Cadillac or Rolls Royce to school, he never got into the car. He used to run back home because the opulence, the richness, the wealth actually embarrassed Mr. Tata. That is Mr. Tata, if you please.
Now, his parents' divorce, you write, had a huge impact on both Ratan and his younger brother Jimmy. You say it made them insecure, and that was made worse by the fact that at school they were ragged, even you say humiliated. How difficult was this for the young Ratan Tata to handle?
See, Karan, you need to transport back to 1944 to understand the settings, to understand the social settings. In 1944, 1945, in 1944, when the parents separated, separation, divorce were not commonplace. So therefore, Mr. Tata said they were outclassed in school, as if they belonged to a different category of people. Now, you need to look at it from this point of view. Suddenly, Mr. Tata, at the age when he's about 7 years old, he loses the company, the affection, and the protection of his mother. Suddenly, he is confronted with a father who has lost his wife to some other man. So you can imagine the tension at home. And his grandmother came to Mr. Tata's rescue and protected him in every sense of the term. But it caused a lot of stress. It caused a lot of social problems for both Ratan and Jimmy. But Ratan, being a very strong man, a very resolute man, was able to overcome all those challenges. And this is a lesson for the future generations, because whatever may be the challenges, Ratan said, I am not the one to give up in life.
Now, after finishing his senior Cambridge in Bombay, as the city was called at the time, Ratan Tata went to America determined to study architecture. However, his father, Naval, wanted him to go to the United Kingdom to study chartered accountancy.
That's true.
He got his way in the end, didn't he?
Yes, he did. As I told you, the calm demeanor of Mr. Tata does not exactly describe him. He is a man of great will and inner strength. What actually happened was his father said, you should go to UK, only study in UK, number one, and number two, study commerce and be a chartered accountant like his father. For Mr. Tata, he had a weakness for architecture, and he had a weakness for the United States. Now, why? That's because when he was about 10, 11 years old, he had gone and stayed at the residence of Mr. Lal, who was India's representative in the UN. So he fell in love with that country. Number one, he did not want to do commerce. He wanted to do architecture. Two, he wanted to go to the US and not the UK. Now, his father, who is otherwise a very compassionate man and not very rigid man, took a very tough stance here. And Mr. Tata, you can expect him to make very smart moves. So he persuaded his grandmother to advise her adopted son, Neville Tata, given if he wants to do his studies in the US, let him go. But as a compromise, his father said, no, I'm not going to allow you to do architecture. You go do mechanical engineering. And there's a story behind it. At that time, there is this company called Kaiser Steel of the US. They were doing large-scale modifications in Tisco at the time. That's Tata Steel. And he said, okay. And his father, Neville, was very impressed with the engineers in Kaiser. So he said, go to the US and do your mechanical engineering. But after 2 years, Mr. Tata thought that it is time that he pursued his dreams and not what he wanted his father to pursue. And he shifted to architecture, and he did brilliantly well. Came up the top of his class.
Now, the truth is, Ratan Tata fell in love with America. You're right that if his grandmother hadn't become old and wanted him back, he could have stayed in America, working and spending his life in the US, which he calls his second home. Tell me, what was it about America that so strongly attracted Ratan Tata?
That's a great question. He enjoyed its freedom. He enjoyed its liberty. And he said he could be what he wanted. And the education gave him a good background, which he could use to get a good job. And plus, as you know, he fell in love. His serious first affair was with Carolyn Jones. And therefore,
Carolyn Emmons.
Wait. Carolyn, initially maiden name is Carolyn Emmons, but Carolyn Jones after she married Owens. Okay. Now, he fell in love with the daughter of the partner of Emmons and Jones. And she was Emmons' daughter. And he fell in love with her and he wanted to marry her. But as you know, in 1962 October, war broke out between India and China. And for an American who has not heard about South Asia much, it looked too fraught with danger because China was an unknown commodity there. It was all Mao and wave theory. So therefore, she took the decision not to come. But that's something she would come to regret later.
Carolyn Emmons was the girl he fell in love with whilst he was working in America shortly after he left Cornell. But
That's
there
right.
were, in fact, three more women he fell in love with. He had four loves in his life, but he never married any of them. Why was that?
See, four serious loves. Let's put it like that. The first was Carolyn Emmons, who finally became Carolyn Jones. The second was a Parsi girl in the 70s who he was engaged to. And he put a solitaire on a finger. But it so happened that he told me that she was very domineering. She wanted to control whatever he did, wherever he went, what time he came from office. He said it was too stifling. So they separated. And the third was an American, a divorcee lady who he met while he was in Harvard in 1974 doing his management program. He was truly in love with her. And she was already married. She had about 3 kids. I've not talked about this in the book because the book was getting very voluminous, as I told you. Maybe after some time, we will look at a second set of publication. And he invited her to India to see what India was like. She was in India for 2 to 3 weeks. They stayed together. And then she wanted him to shift to the United States. And the good gentleman that he was, he went to the United States. He tried it out. He stayed with her. From New Jersey, they used to come to New York every day by bus, trying to see if it could work. Finally, Mr. Tata said it was too difficult to leave India because his grandmother had told him that he would have to embrace the Tata values unfailingly and consider it as a sanguine duty. And finally, he said, she was not willing to come to India, and I was not willing to go to US, and therefore they parted ways.
You said there were 4 great loves. Who was the fourth?
Yeah, I'm coming to the fourth. The fourth was a Gujarati girl. I'm not going to speak much about her because she's in Mumbai or somewhere. I don't want to give clue to her identity. But she was a Gujarati girl, half Mr. Tata's age, and she blew him off his feet. She was so good looking, as I was told, and she was electrifying for him. That's what he said. But unfortunately, what happened was, he says she was very difficult lady, but he was still wanting to try to work it out. But one fine day, she walked away from Ratan and went to her school boyfriend, who she finally married.
Are you saying she ditched Ratan?
I wouldn't say that she ditched Ratan. She walked away from Ratan.
Sounds like the same thing to me.
No, I don't know. No, ditching is very harsh. Okay, ditching is very harsh.
Walking away is pretty harsh too.
No, walking away can also be a very polite way of walking away.
Now, the interesting thing is that he kept up his relationship with Carolyn Emmons for decades. She attended his 80th birthday in 2017. It seems she visited him in 2021. And you add, Ratan takes Carolyn out for dinner almost every time he is in the United States. I presume you spoke to him about Carolyn. How did he seem to remember her?
Karan, let me put the dates and the years in perspective. He did not keep in touch with her. He's a gentleman. You should understand that. He was a gentleman through and through, a gentleman. He was truly in love with her. And he was heartbroken when she got married to Owens, incidentally, a flyer like Mr. Tata and also an architect. So in 1966, when he had gone to San Francisco, he took Carolyn and Owen out for dinner. He said that's what Carolyn told me. She said that he wanted to see if I was happy. And Carolyn had already one child and was expecting her next child. And after the dinner, Ratan confessed after a few years to her that I think you're very, very happy with Aman, and I have no business getting into your life or disrupting in any way, and said, I will not get in touch with you. So he did not keep in touch. But as regards Carolyn is concerned, the embers of love kept burning. May not be bright, but the heat always remained in the ember. And there is a story that is in the 1970s and 80s. She used to look out for magazines to see. I don't think I've written all that here. It is there in the original volume. She had gone to a salon and she was flipping through a journal or a magazine, and suddenly she finds Mr. Tata's photo, saying that he's the most eligible bachelor in India. So she was very jealous, she said, that I was married, but she says, very unfair on my part. I did not, somewhere deep down, I was very happy that he didn't marry. But I knew that I was very bad in having thought in that fashion. And years rolled on. And in 2006, she lost her husband. And 2007, they had gone for this, Hindi movie where the three American brothers travel in India. And what happened was somebody said, do you want to go to India? Suddenly, she thought, oh my God, Ratan would be in India. And Googled, and 2007, Ratan Tata was like an emperor in every sense of the term, having conquered Tetley Tea, having done, the major marquee acquisitions in UK. He was all over the world, all right. And the huge chemical company from the US, which he had already acquired. So he was all over, a big figure, a giant. So she knew where to get the email from, and she called him. She sent him a mail, and Pat came the reply. She says, I want to come and see you. And in 2008, she came to India and saw him. After that, there has been perhaps not many years when they did not meet. They kept meeting, and the relationship continued to grow. And she would see him in Mumbai whenever she got the opportunity, and she came. And that was the story, and that makes people's heart melt.
And as you say, every time he went to the US, he would take her out to dinner.
Yes, of course. They were very much in love with each other.
Now, your book has a lot of details about Ratan Tata's personality and aspects of his life that we don't know about. To begin with, he designed his own house in Bombay, as it was called at the time, called Halikai. You write, some have described it as one of the most luxurious houses in Mumbai, but it is anything but that. Tell me, what sort of house is Halikai?
See, he designed 4 houses. One house, the first house he designed was in Jamshedpur. That's where Tata's foremost metallurgist, who's now retired, Tribidesh Mukherjee, lives. The second is the one in which his mother lived, where his sisters live now. That's in Mumbai, opposite Jaslok Hospital. The third is the Alibag small place. And the fourth is this. Now, this is not a luxurious house or abode at all. It may not be probably as well appointed as your house, Karan. It's very simple, follows the style which was, brought into style and popularity by Emmons and Jones. That is, using lots of steel, lots of glass. Now, you walk into his house, it's just plain, ordinary fittings, upper middle class fittings, ordinary tiles, not beautiful marbles imported from Italy. You walk in and turn left, you see the drawing room. And the drawing room is very sparsely equipped in every sense of the term. On the right side, you have some sofas and a table in the center, a few chairs around. One look, you'll think that it is the house of a struggling entrepreneur. And on the left side is a huge statue, breast statue of Gautam Buddha. Now, I went the first time I saw it, I went and knocked. It was hollow. It is plaster of Paris. I thought it was made out of pure copper or stone, but you could buy it from any shop for about maybe 5,000, 10,000 rupees. And in front you had the dining room, come office room, in the sense almost all the time, after he stepped down and after the pandemic, he worked from the dining table. And when food was ready, Rajen, his butler, would come, remove the books like we do at home, or at least I do at home, and then he would have his lunch or dinner there. Very ordinary house. It's got 4 floors. Okay. Nothing expensive in it.
Okay.
The only thing which looks overpowering is the painting of a tiger as you enter on the top of the room, almost touching the ceiling. That is the only thing that is overpowering. Everything else is understated.
Now, the other thing you point out is that he loved check shirts. You say nearly 90% of the photos taken when he's not in his formals, whether as a boy or in his adult years, show him wearing a check shirt.
Yeah, I kept asking him. He kept, moving away from that question. But it's a fact that if you see, even when he was a boy, he used to always love check shirts, but he couldn't explain why he loved check shirts. But the most interesting thing is that if you see the book in the initial phases of his life, and soon after he came back from the US, you see him doing a ballroom dance with a bush shirt, bright checks. How do you like that? That's what he is, and that's the fad. And invariably, every time you go to his house, he's wearing check shirts. So what I used to do is, adorable man, simple man. He can tease you, you can tease him, is okay. I used to tell him, sir, I'm wearing a check shirt today. And after the second time, whenever I used to go to his house, he said, Thomas, I'm wearing a plain shirt now. So that's how it used to happen. So we used to perceive, each other's mind and then wear check shirt or plain shirt. I don't know. I can't explain why he loved check, but he really loved check shirts. Now maybe it's an American style. I don't know.
He also, it seems, had a fascination for cars. They were kept in the basement of Halakai. What sort of cars did he collect?
He loved the big American cars. Okay, please understand, the late 40s and 50s and 60s were the big American cars. The Cadillacs, the Eldorado, Cadillac, Eldorado, Lincoln Continental, the big muscle cars. Okay? The V8 engine, V12 engine, and he had a Lincoln Continental there. And he had Pontiac, he had Firebird, he had, all kinds of American muscle cars. He had the V8 V12 engine. And plus, of course, he had his Maserati, he had his Lamborghini. That is his only weakness. I mean, as I understand.
That is, to be honest, the only thing that showed he was a rich man, because ordinary people can't afford Lincoln Continentals or Eldorados. That was the one thing where he indulged himself with his wealth.
Yes, that's correct. I agree with you. That's only, that's only giveaway. But then please understand, it is there, but you will not spot him driving a Lincoln Continental. It's just the possession, probably he's going back to his America days. It's not about cars per se. Let me tell you something. I did not have the space to write this. When he used to go to his uncle, I'm talking about his father's brother's place. That is a place where his grandmother also, that is Ratan Tata, that is Neville's mother used to stay. And his uncle used to have 1 or 2 pistols. Okay? So Mr. Tata used to play with the pistol not because of his destructive power, but because of the mechanical movement involved in pressing the trigger and the chamber moving back and the trigger hitting. Okay, but if there's no bullet, it'll just hit, hammer. Now, he was fascinated with movement and machines. If you really ask me, his fascination for cars emanate not for the luxury of the cars, but because the mechanics involved in the car.
Okay.
And it was mechanically, and like he used to tell me, Thomas, I got any machine, I used to take it apart and put it back. So the car was only a manifestation of his love for mechanical objects and how things worked.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Now, perhaps because Ratan Tata didn't have a wife or children, his affection and love was focused on his dogs. He once told the British newspaper The Telegraph, "There is a great sense of loneliness from time to time, but then I have my dogs and they are part of my life." Many people are dog lovers, but you're suggesting that Ratan Tata's relationship with his dogs was at an altogether different level.
See, Karan, let me tell you, people who really love dogs, I've seen many of my friends love them more than their family members, in a manner of speaking. Okay. Now, Mr. Ratan's love for dogs started in, when his grandmother was alive, when he was still in school. He had a fox terrier, which he says that his grandmother first initially did not like, but once he went to the US to do schooling, that's in Riverdale, his grandmother and the dog became inseparable. And his love for dogs, his affection towards the dogs, I think started right in his school days, from the time he got his fox terrier. Now, do the dogs fill the void? Yes, they do. If you have had a dog at your home, they give you unconditional affection and love. Yes, I agree. Maybe because he did not have family, his entire love and affection was concentrated on the dogs, and they gave it back to him in equal measure. And he says, during the loneliest times of his life, whenever he felt uncomfortable, he used to pick up Tito and go all the way to the beach and run and walk and come back. He says that used to be some of the most peaceful moments of his life. So
Now,
dogs
the amazing thing is he almost always called his dogs either Tito or Tango. If I've read your book correctly,
That's right.
you
That's
have
right.
3 separate sets of dogs, each time named Tito and Tango.
See, Karan, you need to look at this deeper. Okay. Why does he name his dogs Tito and Tango? His first dog was Tito, the majestic Tito, which came from Jamshedpur in 1984 with Uday Kumar. Now, normally people do not name their new dogs, which they get, the same name as the dog that must have passed away. Please understand, Mr. Tata is a very affectionate man. He gives love in no small measure. By giving the same name, he perpetuates the memory of his first 2 dogs. Please understand, that's the affection he had for them. So he has a new dog, he will give the name of the old dogs. So the old dog survives in name, and in a manner of speaking, the new dog would represent in many ways what he had lost, but also it would come back to life in many ways.
You talk about his enormous affection for dogs. The truth is, there was nothing he wouldn't do for them. Apparently, when one of the tangos broke his leg, I think it was in 2008, Ratan Tata, you say, scanned the world for a vet who could save the limb, and eventually he flew Tango to Minnesota in America.
That's right. And, there's a very interesting story there. That was the time exactly when Carolyn Jones was coming to India to visit him. And she told him that this is exactly the time that she's going to land in Mumbai. And that's the time the doctor gave, that is a vet in the US, gave Mr. Tata the appointment for Tango. He did not wait to see Carolyn Jones. He flew to Minnesota. And she was quite unhappy about it. But he said he had to go all the way to Minnesota to save the limb of his dog, which he did. So you can imagine the intensity of his affection for dogs.
Absolutely. The dog was the number one priority.
I would not say that. I would say that the dog would not be his number two priority.
Okay. Right at the end of your book, when you're writing about Ratan Tata in the last years of his life, you say, and I'm quoting you, today Ratan has only Tito, for whom every evening is invariably reserved. He does not like anyone or any program to disturb that schedule. He says that the time he spends with Tito is the best time of the day for him. Those were the moments that he looked forward to the most, when he could sit quietly and be with the dog he loved.
That's true. He had both Tito and Tango. He couldn't handle both because they're very young. And both of them, in their prime, would fight for dominance. So therefore, Mr. Tata was getting old. He couldn't control them. So therefore, he kept Tito and then played with him. And I'll tell you the affection. Please understand, I don't know. This is what the papers say, or this is what the rumor mill says. That Mr. Tata in his will has said his page or his butler or his good friend Rajen would look after Tito for life, and said there'll be no limit on the expenses that can be incurred to look after Tito during his lifetime.
You mentioned Rajen, and that's another very important aspect of Ratan Tata that I want to raise with you. He was exceptionally good to his staff. Of Rajen, who you describe as his cook, you write, Ratan takes care of Rajan's every need, or rather pampers him. Most Indians who have staff don't treat their staff anywhere near as well as Ratan Tata treated Rajan.
See, please understand, I made a point in the beginning. What Mr. Tata represented was in many ways the amalgam of the values which his grandmother had. Very polite, very caring, very affectionate, very giving, whether servants or outsiders. So Mr. Tata, whatever he was in his lifetime, to me, 90% of his values, what he liked, what he disliked, his preferences, the way he dealt with people.
Give me an example of how he would pamper Rajan.
Oh, it's very interesting. Rajan is a bong, Bihari kind of bong. Okay, he has his place in Calcutta. Okay, and you have the Arabian Sea. The house Alakai faces Alakai, which means house by the sea, faces the Arabian Sea. So one day, Rajan thought he's going to be a fisherman. So he told Mr. Tata that, on a next trip, please buy me a fishing rod. So he was in Mauritius. So you find the chairman of Tata Sons, chairman of Tata Trust, going from shop to shop, looking for a fishing rod for Rajan. And the kind of fishing rod he wanted was different from what is normally available in Mauritius, because for Mauritius is normally deep sea kind of fishing. So the different kind. So he said almost half the day he went searching for a fishing rod, and he got him a fishing rod, came back. It's a different matter that Rajan has not been able to haul even one fish. That's a different matter. And Rajan used to wear the Cornell t-shirts. Every time he went to Cornell, he got his t-shirts, and you can see Rajan flying through rooms wearing the Cornell t-shirt. And let me tell you something. How do I explain this to you? Mr. Tata is not the ordinary human being, or is not what people see him to be in many ways. You can see him sitting and having with his lunch with Rajen's daughter on the same table. I was shocked the first time. His egalitarian outlook, treating people with equality, he takes it to a different level altogether.
But it wasn't just Rajan that, as you say, he pampered. You mentioned earlier in this interview Uday, who brought a dog from Jamshedpur in 1984 for Ratan Tata.
That's right.
Uday Kumar was a dog trainer with Telco at the time. Ratan Tata was so grateful, he kept Uday Kumar for 3 or 4 weeks before he let him return.
That's right. Mr. Tata treats also Subbaiah, the other help at home, with equal care and affection. And I don't know about the will. Even if I know, I can't say anything. But I'm told that he's left enough for them to take care of their lives, both Subbaiah and Rajan. That's how caring he is. Okay. Now, Uday Kumar, this man is different. In 1984, he fell in love with this pup Tito from Jamshedpur, his most majestic dog, huge, beautiful, handsome guy. If you see many of the photographs in the 80s, late 80s, you will see Mr. Tata and Tito occupying the front row. And Mr. Tito's demeanor is in fact more majestic than even Mr. Tata's. If you see, I've got 1 or 2 photos in the book. And he treated him so well that he went to the railway station and carried his bag for him. And he says, I interviewed Udayan in Jamshedpur, and Mr. Tata wrote a beautiful letter to the security officer for having deputed Udayan and addressing the security officer, my dear sir. That is Mr. Tata.
But he kept, when Uday brought that dog, he kept Uday with him in Bombay for 3 or 4 weeks.
Not only 4 weeks, he pampered to all his wishes, took him around, showed him around the beaches, bought him coke, took him swimming, and they ate the same food. And when he left, Mr. Tata himself went to the railway station and pushed under the bench of the wagon, that is where he was sitting, some Nelco radios, some blankets from Empress Mills he was working, and lots of food items, and told him, your children will love them. So that's, Mr. Tata.
Now, you also reveal, and this is the surprising side of Ratan Tata for most people, that he was a prankster. At board meetings, he would get up to mischief with the shoes of elderly directors. What exactly would he do?
He used to find these long board meetings boring. So you can imagine these old people, when they keep, sitting for long number of hours, their feet swell up. So it's uncomfortable to wear the shoes. So they slowly kick the shoe off their feet. And Mr. Tata was a very sharp observer of things. He used to see who are the people who have removed their shoes. So what he would do is, tall man, over 6 feet, long legs, he used to kick the shoes away from their feet. So can you imagine the meeting ends and Mr. Tata says, okay, the meeting is over, so let's rise. So how will they rise without their shoes? So suddenly you will see one leg going to the right, one leg going to the left, and legs clashing, the old men legs clashing, and then suddenly they find their shoes are not there, and they suddenly start wearing somebody else's shoes, and if they don't find the shoes, they bend down, and everybody used to laugh. That's Mr. Tata for you. And then the most interesting thing was, that is what Mr. Krishna Kumar told me in one of the board meetings. Tata Sons chairman was caught fixing a water pistol aimed at Baba, board member, okay, where he was sitting. And if Ratan had his way, and if Mr. Tata had his way, he would have press the trigger of the water pistol, and poor Baba would have to get up with all wet pants. But an attendant suddenly found that before the board meeting, there was somebody was bending down under the table. So he accosted him, and then found there's none other than Mr. Tata, the chairman. So that's this man. And also with the sisters, with Shireen and Dina, whom he really loves, he used to play a lot of pranks with them. That is what he used to do all the time. He used to come home and say, okay, I'm going to this place, please press my clothes. After he packs, he says, I'm not going.
That's I imagine the sisters would have loved that. Now,
the three were a trio. Okay, sorry.
Now, I believe your book was finished 2 years ago. Why wasn't it published during Ratan Tata's lifetime? Instead, it was rushed into print days or weeks after he died. Is there something in the book that might have upset him? Is that why he published while he was alive?
See, I'll tell you what. No. We had nobody even dreamt that, to me, my understanding was that he would live for another 6-7 years minimum. Okay. His health suddenly dipped. I don't know why. Okay. But even people who met him about a week before he died, 2 weeks before he died, he was all there. Health was fine, keen of mind, everything was there. We did not expect. The date for the release was already fixed for the 25th. So therefore, if you see the book, if you read the book, Mr. Tata is referred to in present tense. Only the jacket remained to be printed. And the jacket was only thing that remained to be printed. And as Mr. Tata had very sadly, very, very sadly passed on, I wish he had lived for another 6-7 years more. The jacket has a past tense in it. That is, he is referred to in past tense. So nothing was hurried, nothing was pushed. 25th was a day when we thought we will reveal, we would release the book. And you're saying 2 years back, but the answer is no, not 2 years back. If you really look at the book, it has almost 3,900 footnotes. Okay, this book appends not my research, but we worked hard for it. It appends all existing narratives on 90% of what we know about the Tata Group. Okay, the first, as I said, was the fact that when Mr. Tata was selected as a successor to JRD, everybody turned around and said, Mr. Tata is an outsider. He doesn't even belong to the family. So we dug deep, and it's only the end of 2022 that we got finally the details from the the trustee of the Navsari priest where you keep.
Absolutely. I'm interrupting you because you make this point in your book. You write, I assiduously collected and analyzed virtually everything ever written or spoken about Ratan, however hidden they lay. This book, and this becomes apparent from the way you talk about Ratan Tata and the way you talk about the research and the efforts put into the book. This book was a labor of love. It meant a lot to you to write it.
Yes, of course. I'll tell you what. He used to tell me, Thomas, this is wrong. Nobody understands this every time. I'll give you one instance. Okay, very, very important. Until now, even now, people have not probably understood this. The existing narrative is that the Shapurji Palanji group got their 18.4% of the shares of Tata Sons, beginning the 1930s when they bought what is called F.E. Dinshaw Limited Company. Now, let me tell you something very interesting.
But short, in brief.
The fact is that that's not the case. They bought F.E. Dinshaw Company. F.E. Dinshaw had nothing, no shares. It was only in 1965 that Shapurji Palanji Group picked it up from Radhabai Shawnee, the sister of JRD. It appends all existing narratives. So therefore, one had to recheck each of the figures. When you talk about 3,600 or 3,900 footnotes, they said, sorry, we can't add it because about 300, 400 pages. So therefore, that was converted notes. So it's a huge, effort. and we did not want any mistakes. So that's what it is. This is the earliest opportunity.
I hear what you're saying. An enormous amount of effort went to this book. You had a terrific research team working with you. And yet, the Hindustan Times claims that Ratan Tata distanced himself from the book. And it was published without, the paper says, his stamp of approval.
Now, see, this is something, I wish, I'm not going to comment on what the author of that article wrote, but I wish people had read my author's note. I wish if somebody had read the author's note, they will understand the genesis of this book and how fiercely I protected its independence. Right from the beginning, it is meant to be an independent work. Why? Because let's say 30, 40, 50 years from now, I do not want anybody to decry the research or dismiss it as a paid job. And therefore, every paisa spent on this has been spent from my personal funds to maintain its independence.
But did Ratan Tata
I'm just going to come to. We discussed a lot. There are so many things he was so fascinated about. I know time is short. I'll just give you one example.
But very quickly, because time is very short. We've already been going on for 45 minutes.
Yeah. We discussed a lot. I don't think there is anything in it that you would have been unhappy about. I don't think so. I don't think at all. In fact, you would have been happy about, we brought it and put it in one place, all what he had done. And this is the first time that it had done. And he told me just one point. When I told him about the top line growth of Tata Motors from 1988, when he took over as chairman, to 2016, that is the time, 3-4 years after he stepped down. That's because of the contraction. It takes about 3-4 years for it to show the initial position as it was. That's the time it takes to recover from a contraction, economic contraction. It was nearly 20,000%. I wish I would have recorded that statement. Mr. Tata was excited, not because he felt that he did great. He thought he did a service to the nation by making Tata Motors, which produced India's first indigenous designed cars.
So what you're saying is that far from distancing himself, far from not giving you the stamp of approval, you're telling me Ratan Tata helped you, collaborated with you to the extent you were prepared to let him, and he was happy with the book. That's what you're saying.
Yes, he was certainly happy with it.
All right.
The narratives, we put all these things together. There were many things he even did not know. There were several things which he were not even aware. For instance, the top line growth when compared to most of the companies in the world, it was much bigger or much larger than even the biggest companies in the world. This is my favorite example is GE's. He beat Jack Welch hollow. Okay. But unfortunately, Jack
Welch. We are not about Jack Welch. This interview is about Ratan Tata, the person, his personality, his private life, the women he loved and never married. And let's keep that as our focus. I thank you for revealing to us a side of Ratan Tata that otherwise we would never have found out about. And I think it's particularly fascinating to know that Ratan Tata, the bachelor, actually had 4 great loves in his life.
Serious loves.
Two of them were American women. One was a Parsi and one was a Gujarati who was apparently, you say, strikingly beautiful. But unfortunately, to use your words, she walked away from him.
It is not that others were not beautiful. I did not say that. Others were equally beautiful.
You insist she didn't ditch him, but you say she walked away from him. And if I might add, how very sad it is that he should have loved someone who walked away. But thank you for this wonderful story you've told us. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you, Karan. Thank you, Karan. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.